Olivia Chase sat motionless at her daughter's desk, her fingers tracing the edge of a framed photograph. Sunlight spilled through curtains that hadn't been opened in nearly 2 years, illuminating dust motes that danced in the still air. The room remained exactly as it had been the day Sophia disappeared. Homework half finished on the desk, a collection of seashells arranged on the windowsill, the closet door slightly ajar, revealing a rainbow of carefully hung clothes. "Liv, we need to finish packing." Olivia looked up to see her husband, Marcus, standing in the doorway. At 40, his once youthful face now carried deep worry lines that had formed over the past 2 years. The silver at his temples had spread, making him look older than his years. His eyes, always his most expressive feature, held a wariness that hadn't been there before. "I know," she said softly, rising from the chair. "I just wanted to sit here one more time before we leave." Marcus nodded, understanding without words. This small bedroom in their Pinecrest, Montana home had become a shrine of sorts, the last place that definitively held traces of their daughter. Leaving for New York felt like abandoning her somehow, though rationally they knew that wasn't true. "The suitcases are in the car," Marcus said. "Mrs. Abernathy will check on the house while we're gone." Olivia nodded, taking one last look around the room before following Marcus into the hallway. Her hand lingered on the doorknob for a moment before gently pulling it closed. Their modest living room was filled with evidence of their upcoming trip. Travel documents on the coffee table, a folder containing all of Sophia's information, and freshly printed missing person flyers stacked neatly beside them. Olivia picked up the top flyer, studying the image of her daughter, 12 years old in the photo, with chestnut hair falling past her shoulders and eyes the color of sea glass. She'd be 14 now. "Do you really think this tip is different?" Olivia asked, not for the first time. Marcus sighed, his shoulders rising and falling with the weight of cautious hope. "It's more specific than most. The caller mentioned the community event at Bryant Park, gave a specific date and time, and they described her scar. The scar, a small crescent-shaped mark on Sophia's left wrist from a childhood accident, wasn't visible in any of the public photos they'd distributed. Only someone who had seen her up close would know about it." "I just don't want to get my hopes up again," Olivia said, her voice barely audible. Marcus crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on the top of her head. "I know, but we have to follow every lead, no matter how many times we've been disappointed before." Olivia leaned into his embrace, drawing strength from the solid warmth of him. Their marriage had been tested by Sophia's disappearance, bent almost to the breaking point by grief and the different ways they'd each tried to survive it. But they hadn't broken. Somehow they'd held on, even as the search for their daughter transformed them both. "The flight leaves in 3 hours," Marcus reminded her gently. "We should go." Olivia nodded, picking up her purse and the folder of documents. As they walked to the door, she paused by the small table where their family Bible lay. Carefully, she opened it to the bookmarked page and touched the passage she'd read every day for the past 2 years. "Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you." Then she closed the Bible, squared her shoulders, and followed Marcus out to the car. The modest Airbnb in Greenwich Village was nothing like their Montana home, but it was clean, conveniently located, and, most importantly, within their budget. 2 years of funding private investigators and traveling for possible sightings had depleted their savings considerably. Olivia sat on the living room sofa, her laptop open on the coffee table before her, eyes heavy from the long journey. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, turning the New York streets into a blur of reflected lights and umbrella tops. Yes, we've just arrived in New York, Marcus said into his phone, pacing the small living room. We can come to the station today. Yes, we have all her information with us. Olivia barely listened to her husband's conversation with the police. She focused instead on the laptop screen, typing in the address Marcus repeated from the phone call. Google Maps loaded, displaying their route from the Airbnb to the police station. They said they'll be expecting us in about an hour, Marcus said after ending the call, running his hand through his hair, a nervous habit that had intensified over the past 2 years. I'm just looking at the area, Olivia murmured, zooming in and out on the map. They weren't familiar with New York at all. Their home in Pinecrest was a small town where everyone knew each other, where children could walk to school alone, where tragedies like theirs simply didn't happen, until they did. 2 years ago, Sophia had disappeared after attending a youth group meeting at their local church. She was last seen walking with friends toward the Main Street ice cream shop. She never made it home. The search that followed consumed their lives, transformed their marriage, and tested their faith more deeply than either could have imagined. Olivia scrolled around the map, familiarizing herself with the area surrounding their temporary home. They had specifically chosen this Airbnb for its proximity to Bryant Park, where the tip had led them. The anonymous caller was very specific, Olivia said, more to herself than to Marcus. Said they saw a girl matching Sophia's description at a homeless community event near Bryant Park, complete with the wrist scar. It's the first credible lead we've had in months. Previous tips had led nowhere, each one initially raising their hopes only to crush them later. But something about this call felt different, concrete enough to justify the cross-country journey on what might be yet another wild goose chase. Olivia continued exploring the digital map, finding herself drawn to the area around Bryant Park. She noticed several small churches scattered around the neighborhood. There are a lot of churches here, she said, a small measure of relief in her voice. I was worried I wouldn't be able to attend service while we're here. Marcus nodded absently, unpacking his toiletry bag on the kitchen counter. Olivia understood his distance. Once a devoted man of faith, Marcus had withdrawn from church life after Sophia's disappearance, unable to face the well-meaning but painful questions, the pitying looks, the theological platitudes that did nothing to bring their daughter back. Olivia, on the other hand, had clung more tightly to her faith, working as the church office administrator in Pinecrest, finding solace in prayer, even as doubt gnawed at her. I've booked us for 2 weeks, Olivia said, but we can extend if we need to. Marcus joined her on the sofa, the cushion dipping under his weight. Let me see what you found. Olivia showed him the police department location, Bryant Park, and the various churches she'd discovered. I think we have a good starting point. Let's check the street view, Marcus suggested, taking over the touchpad. I want to see what this Bryant Park looks like. Olivia watched as he navigated through the virtual streets, the familiar blue figure dragging through the digital representation of their search area. First, they viewed the community park, then began exploring the surrounding streets. That's Maple Street, Olivia noted as they turned onto a residential road with a small church visible at the end. Marcus zoomed in closer as they approached the church, and that's when Olivia saw it. A girl in a rose-colored hoodie walking with a man, their backs to the Google camera car. Marcus! Olivia's voice caught in her throat, her finger stabbing at the screen. Look! The rose-colored hoodie with the small embroidered butterfly on the back was identical to the one Sophia had been wearing the day she disappeared. Olivia had bought it for her 12th birthday, just 3 weeks before she vanished. It was etched in her memory like a brand. Can you turn it around? She urged, her heart racing. See if we can see their faces. Marcus manipulated the controls, trying to find another angle, but the faces were blurred out, as was standard in Google Street View. They were only visible in a few frames, always from behind or at an angle that revealed nothing conclusive. "Something about that man seems familiar," Olivia whispered, leaning closer to the screen. Marcus sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Liv, this is the 100th time you've spotted a girl in a rose-colored hoodie. You've become fixated on that outfit." "I know how badly you want to find her," he said gently. "I do too, but we can't jump at every pink sweater we see." Olivia marked all the points of interest on the map anyway, then closed her laptop. Marcus was right. They needed to be methodical, not impulsive. They had a plan. "We should go," Marcus said, standing up. "We'll go to the station first, talk to the police, get permission to put up missing person posters, and then check out Bryant Park with an officer." Olivia nodded, collecting the stack of freshly printed posters from their suitcase. Each one featured Sophia's smiling face, her bright eyes, her long hair, and the details of her disappearance. 2 years of distributing these posters had worn a groove in Olivia's heart, but she wasn't giving up. She couldn't. As they headed to the door, Olivia couldn't shake the image of the rose-colored hoodie on Maple Street. A mother knows, she thought to herself. A mother always knows. Olivia drove carefully through the unfamiliar New York streets, following the blue line on her phone's GPS. Marcus sat beside her, reviewing the case notes they'd compiled for the local police. "Turn right at the next light," the robotic voice instructed. As they approached the intersection, Olivia realized they were passing Bryant Park. "Look," she said, slowing down slightly. "That's the park from the tip." The park was vibrant even in the late afternoon drizzle. Children in colorful raincoats played on the wet equipment, couples walked hand in hand beneath umbrellas, and a small gathering near a gazebo might have been a community event similar to the one described in the anonymous tip. Olivia felt an urge to stop, to get out and search every face, to call Sophia's name until her voice gave out. "We'll come back later," Marcus reminded her gently, sensing her thoughts. "On our own, it might be fruitless. We need the help of trained eyes." Olivia nodded reluctantly and continued driving. But as they approached the next turn, she spotted a street sign, Maple Street, and without thinking, she signaled and turned. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, his voice sharpening. "This is the wrong way." Olivia kept her eyes on the road. "I want to visit the church we saw on Google Maps, just for a moment." "Liv—" "I need to pray, Marcus. Just a short prayer before we talk to the police." Marcus leaned back against the headrest, his frustration evident. "There won't be a service at this time of day. We're wasting precious time. You can pray in the car. God will hear you regardless. He's not confined to church buildings." His voice took on a hint of bitterness. "You know that doctrine well enough." Olivia remained silent, her eyes scanning the street, looking for any sign of a rose-colored hoodie, any familiar faces. The street was quiet in the late afternoon drizzle. "You just wanted to check the street, didn't you?" Marcus said, not really asking. "Where you saw that girl walking." "I know," Olivia admitted quietly. "But I just felt this pull. I can't explain it. The police will always be at the station, but I needed to respond to this call in my heart." Marcus studied his wife's profile, noticing the determined set of her jaw that had become so familiar over the past 2 years. He'd learned when to push and when to surrender, and he recognized this as one of the latter moments. The church came into view, a small brick building with a white cross above the entrance. Olivia pulled into the nearly empty parking lot and turned off the engine. "I'll wait outside," Marcus said, unbuckling his seatbelt. "I need some fresh air and to let the police know we'll be a bit late." Olivia watched him exit the car, his tall frame stooped slightly, with the weight of their shared burden. They had once moved in perfect sync, their marriage a dance of mutual support and understanding. Now they often felt like strangers sharing a tragedy, each processing their grief in ways the other couldn't fully comprehend. She gathered her purse and the small Bible she always carried, Sophia's name inscribed on the leather cover, a gift for her 10th birthday. The binding was worn from Olivia's daily readings, from the desperate prayers whispered into its pages. As Olivia approached the church entrance, a sense of both trepidation and strange certainty washed over her. She couldn't explain the feeling, not to Marcus, not to herself, but something had drawn her to this specific place. Whether it was divine guidance or a mother's intuition, she was going to follow it. She pulled open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside, leaving Marcus to make his apologetic call to the police across the street. The cool, dim interior welcomed her like an old friend. The familiar scent of candles and polished wood, a comfort even in this strange city. The church interior was quiet, with sunlight filtering through stained glass windows, casting colourful patterns on the wooden pews. Olivia stood for a moment, allowing her eyes to adjust to the dimmer light after the bright afternoon outside. A middle-aged man in casual clothes was cleaning one of the pews, methodically wiping down the wood with a cloth. No congregation was present, confirming Marcus's assumption about the timing of services. Olivia slowly approached, her footsteps echoing in the empty sanctuary. "Excuse me," she said softly. The man looked up, offering a friendly smile. "Hello there. Can I help you?" "I hope so," Olivia said, pulling out her phone. "I'm looking for information about a girl and a man I saw in this area." She opened Google Maps and showed him the blurred Street View image she'd saved. "I know it's not very clear, but I wondered if you might recognize them." The maintenance man squinted at the screen, studying the pixelated figures. His brow furrowed with concentration. "It's hard to tell with the blurring, but something about them does look familiar." He handed the phone back. "Are they friends of yours?" Olivia hesitated, unsure how much to share with a stranger. "I'm trying to find my daughter," she said finally. "She's been missing for 2 years and I'm following every possible lead." The man's expression shifted to one of deep sympathy. "I'm so sorry to hear that. Before he could finish, the door to a back office opened and 2 men stepped out. They were engaged in conversation, both wearing the distinctive clerical collars of Protestant ministers. Olivia's breath caught in her throat as she studied the second man. "Thank you for your help," she said hastily, to the maintenance man, then made her way toward the 2 pastors. The pastor in the formal robe noticed her approach and paused his conversation. "Good afternoon. Can I help you?" "Yes, hello," Olivia said, extending her hand. "I was just admiring your beautiful church." Pastor Jennings?" the man introduced himself, shaking her hand. "I'm the senior pastor here. This is Reverend Sullivan, who's been guest preaching for us these past 2 weeks." "Reverend Sullivan?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The minister looked at her with a moment of blank confusion before his expression cleared. "I'm sorry. Have we met?" Olivia stepped closer. "I'm Olivia Chase from Pinecrest, Montana. I work at Grace Community Church there. I was part of the team that invited you to preach at our Sunday service a few years ago." She smiled, trying to jog his memory. "I arranged your accommodations and helped with all the logistics for your visit." Reverend Sullivan continued to look at her with polite confusion. Olivia pressed on. "You led our youth group and did a healing service. A woman with chronic pain was healed. It was quite remarkable. Everyone talked about it for months." A flash of recognition, or what appeared to be recognition, crossed his face. Ah, yes, Olivia Chase, of course. What a blessed event that was. He smiled broadly. The Lord works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? I never forget a healing, though sometimes the faces of those who assist blur together after so many church visits. Olivia nodded, understanding a travelling minister like Sullivan would visit dozens of churches every year. It's a pleasure to see you again. Are you serving here now? Just a guest pastor, Sullivan explained, his voice warm and confident. I'm here for 2 weeks before continuing my church tour. This is actually my final day. I'll be preaching at the evening service tonight, then catching a night flight out of New York. What an incredible coincidence to meet you here, Olivia said, though in her heart she wondered if it was coincidence at all. Perhaps this was what had drawn her to this particular church, God's hand guiding her steps. Indeed, Sullivan agreed. What brings you to New York, so far from home? Olivia's smile faltered. My daughter, Sophia, she went missing 2 years ago, shortly after your visit to our church, actually. She pulled out one of the posters from her bag, unfolding it to show them Sophia's photograph. We received a tip that someone saw a girl matching her description near Bryant Park. My husband and I came immediately. Reverend Sullivan stared at the photo, his expression unreadable for a moment. He seemed to stiffen slightly, though Olivia wasn't certain if she was imagining it. Pastor Jennings moved forward, placing a comforting hand on Olivia's arm. Oh, my dear, what a terrible ordeal for your family. Let us pray together for Sophia's safe return. The three of them formed a small circle, Pastor Jennings taking Olivia's hand in his. Reverend Sullivan joined after a slight hesitation. Pastor Jennings led a heartfelt prayer for Sophia's safety and for God's guidance in the search. When they finished, Reverend Sullivan stepped forward and embraced Olivia. The hug was friendly at first, but then tightened, almost as if he was holding her in place. Olivia felt a moment of discomfort as he seemed to inhale deeply, as though taking in her scent. Something about the gesture felt invasive, inappropriate, not at all like the comforting embrace of a spiritual leader. As they separated, Olivia noticed something strange. In the breast pocket of Sullivan's suit, partially visible for just a split second, was what appeared to be a photograph. The image was facing inward, but the paper was thin enough that Olivia could make out the silhouette of what looked like a young girl. Before she could process what she'd seen, Sullivan straightened his jacket, noticing the protruding edge of the photo and quickly tucking it deeper into his pocket. A photo of my niece, he explained smoothly. I carry it everywhere. She's always in my heart. Olivia nodded, trying to hide her unease. The silhouette had looked familiar, too familiar. We'll certainly mention your daughter to our congregation at tonight's service, Pastor Jennings assured her. Many eyes are better than few when searching for someone. Thank you, Olivia said, gathering her composure. I should go. My husband is waiting and we need to get to the police station. As she turned to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The way Reverend Sullivan had reacted to Sophia's photo, the strange embrace, the glimpse of the photograph in his pocket, all of it sent warning signals through her mind. But surely she was being paranoid. This was a man of God, respected in many churches across the country. Still, as she walked toward the exit, Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the church's air conditioning. Olivia stepped out of the church into the warm afternoon air, her mind racing. The suspicion that had taken root inside couldn't be easily dismissed, no matter how irrational it might seem to others. To Marcus, especially. She spotted her husband sitting in their rental car, his expression thunderous, and she steeled herself for his frustration. "What took you so long?" Marcus demanded as she approached. "You've been in there for 25 minutes. The police are waiting for us." Olivia slid into the driver's seat, but kept the door open to catch the breeze. "Marcus, you won't believe who I just met inside. Reverend Sullivan, the one who visited our church in Pinecrest about 2 years ago, right before Sophia disappeared." Marcus looked unimpressed. "And there's something off about him," Olivia insisted, lowering her voice despite being alone in the car. "When I hugged him, he held me too tight, like he was, I don't know, smelling me or something. And he had a photograph in his pocket. I only saw it for a second, but the silhouette looked like Sophia." "Olivia?" Marcus began, his tone suggesting he was about to dismiss her concerns. "I know how it sounds," she interrupted, "but I'm not imagining things. When I showed him Sophia's photo, he reacted strangely. He seemed startled." Marcus's expression softened slightly as he registered the urgency in her voice. "Look, we've served in church together for years. We know how respected ministers like him are. If what you're suggesting is true, it would shock a lot of people. You need to be absolutely certain before making any kind of accusation." "I'm not saying I'm certain," Olivia clarified. "I'm just saying something doesn't feel right." Marcus rubbed his temples, clearly torn between supporting his wife and maintaining rationality. "Let's just go to the police station as planned. They're waiting for us. We can sort all this out there. If your suspicions have any merit, they'll know how to proceed." Olivia nodded reluctantly. "You're right. With police presence, we can always ask Pastor Jennings for the Reverend's contact information later, if needed." Before they could continue their discussion, the church doors opened and Reverend Sullivan emerged. He waved goodbye to Pastor Jennings, saying something about returning before the evening service, then spotted Olivia and Marcus and offered a friendly wave as he walked to his car, which was parked next to theirs. As Sullivan opened his car door, Olivia was hit by a familiar scent wafting from the vehicle's interior, a sweet vanilla fragrance that she recognized instantly. It was Sophia's favorite perfume, the one Olivia had given her for Christmas the year before she disappeared. Sophia had worn it daily, cherishing it as her grown-up smell. Olivia felt her blood turn to ice. This couldn't be a coincidence. Sullivan reversed out of his parking space and drove away, seemingly unaware of the bombshell he'd just dropped in Olivia's lap. "Get in the car, Marcus," Olivia said urgently, already climbing back into the driver's seat. "Close the door." Marcus complied, confused by her sudden intensity. "What is it?" "Didn't you smell that?" Olivia asked, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. "Smell what?" "When he opened his car door, that vanilla scent. It's Sophia's perfume, the one I gave her that she wore every day." Marcus stared at his wife, concern evident in his expression. "Olivia, you're connecting dots that might not be there. Vanilla is an extremely common scent. It could be his niece's perfume, or his wife's, or even an air freshener." Olivia turned the key in the ignition. "I feel it in my gut, Marcus. A strong pull. I need to follow it." "And go where?" "Chase after a respected minister based on a smell?" "I just want to confirm it. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it, and we'll go straight to the police station as planned, but I need to do this." Marcus threw up his hands in exasperation. "Now, you're spiritualizing everything. This is exactly how false accusations start. People following gut feelings instead of reason." The accusations stung, especially coming from Marcus. Olivia reversed out of the parking space, her jaw set in determination. "I'm not making accusations. I'm a mother who's worked in a church long enough to know when something doesn't add up with a pastor." Marcus turned to stare out the window, his posture rigid with frustration. "Fine, do whatever you want. But when you embarrass yourself because of this wild goose chase, don't say I didn't warn you." The car filled with tense silence as Olivia pulled onto Maple Street, following in the direction the Reverend had gone. Her heart pounded in her chest, torn between fear of being right and fear of being wrong. If she was mistaken, she was delaying their meeting with the police for nothing. But if she was right, they might, finally, find Sophia. Olivia tightened her grip on the steering wheel and pressed on, following the instinct that had brought her to this moment, a mother's intuition that refused to be silenced. Olivia maintained a careful distance behind Reverend Sullivan's car, making sure to stay far enough back that he wouldn't notice them following. Marcus sat beside her in stony silence, his arms crossed over his chest, his disagreement radiating from every pore. "This is ridiculous," he muttered after several minutes. "We can't call the police because we have nothing but your suspicions and a vanilla scent. We're wasting valuable time." "Just bear with me," Olivia pleaded, her eyes fixed on Sullivan's sedan. "If I'm wrong, I'll never do something like this again." They followed the car into a residential neighborhood, where the houses were larger and more spaced out than in the area around their Airbnb. Finally, Sullivan pulled into the driveway of an attractive two-story home with a well-maintained garden. A small vacation rental sign stood beside the mailbox. Olivia drove past slowly, then parked around the corner where they could still observe the house without being obvious. She killed the engine and waited. "Now what?" Marcus asked, his patience clearly wearing thin. "Now we watch," Olivia said simply. Sullivan exited his car and went into the house, closing the door behind him. Minutes ticked by in silence as Olivia and Marcus sat in their parked car, the tension between them thickening. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 10 minutes, the front door opened again. A woman emerged carrying 2 large suitcases which she loaded into the trunk of Sullivan's car. She was in her mid-30s with dark hair pulled back in a professional-looking bun. She disappeared back into the house only to reappear moments later with a smaller suitcase, child-sized. "He said he was leaving New York tonight after the service," Olivia whispered, as though the woman might hear them from this distance. The woman went back inside and shortly afterward returned to the doorway with a young girl. The child looked to be about 13 or 14 years old, with blonde hair in neat pigtails. The girl gave Reverend Sullivan a kiss on the cheek as he appeared in the doorway behind her, and he hugged her briefly before waving goodbye. As the girl turned to walk to the car with the woman, Olivia strained to see her face, hoping against hope. But it wasn't Sophia. The features were all wrong, the hair color different, the build much smaller than Sophia would be now after 2 years. "See?" Marcus said softly, though without triumph. "That must be his niece, just like he said." Olivia's hope deflated like a punctured balloon. She had been so certain, so convinced that her instincts were leading her toward Sophia. Now she felt foolish, exactly as Marcus had predicted. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears pricking at her eyes. "I really thought... I was so sure." Marcus's expression softened as he placed a hand on her arm. "It's okay. You're a mother looking for her child. Anyone would grasp at straws in your position." Olivia nodded, unable to speak, past the lump in her throat. The photograph she'd glimpsed, the vanilla scent. Had she imagined their significance? Had grief and desperation led her to create connections where none existed? "Let's switch seats," Marcus suggested gently. "I'll drive us to the police station." They got out and exchanged places, Olivia slumping into the passenger seat, emotionally drained by the roller coaster of hope and disappointment. Marcus started the car but didn't immediately put it in gear. "Liv, I need you to set the GPS to the police station. I have no idea where we are." Olivia pulled out her phone, her movements mechanical as she typed in the address. The familiar blue line appeared, guiding them back toward their original destination. As Marcus began to drive, Olivia kept her eyes fixed on the Reverend's house until it disappeared from view. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had missed something vital, that a piece of the puzzle was still eluding her. But for now, she had to accept that her suspicions had led nowhere. It was time to return to their plan, to meet with the police, who might actually help them find Sophia. Olivia leaned her head against the window, watching the unfamiliar New York landscape slide by. 2 years of searching, of following leads that went nowhere, of enduring the pitying looks from friends and family who had long since given up hope. It had worn her down to her core. Yet something inside her refused to surrender, refused to accept that Sophia might never come home. That something, call it faith, call it maternal instinct, had brought them across the country on the slim chance of finding their daughter. And despite this latest disappointment, Olivia knew she would continue following it wherever it led, for as long as it took, because a mother never stopped searching for her child. Olivia continued to watch the road, still keeping an eye out for the Reverend's car. So far, it seemed they were headed in the same general direction, out of the residential area and back toward the main thoroughfares. "Look," Olivia said suddenly, pointing ahead. "They're turning." Marcus sighed but slowed down slightly, watching as the car carrying the woman and the young girl turned into what appeared to be a private school with an attached playground. Through the chain-link fence, Olivia could see several children gathered outside, seemingly waiting. "Marcus, slow down more," Olivia urged. "I want to see what's happening." "No," Marcus said firmly, accelerating instead. "No more side missions, Olivia. We're already late for our appointment with the police. We're going straight there now." Olivia craned her neck, trying to see as much as possible as they drove past the school. She caught a glimpse of the woman greeting another adult, the small blonde girl joining a group of waiting children. But then they were past it, the scene disappearing behind them. She slumped back in her seat, her hope deflating once more. "Marcus, I'm sorry, but—" "No," he interrupted, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "We need to learn from this, Olivia. Gut feelings can be misleading. They can make us see connections that aren't there." Olivia fell silent, knowing he was right, but unable to shake the nagging feeling that they had missed something important. The vanilla scent, the photograph, the suitcases. It all meant something. She was sure of it. But without concrete evidence, she couldn't expect Marcus or the police to take her seriously. They drove in tense silence for several minutes before Marcus spoke again, his voice gentler. "I know how badly you want to find her. I do too. But we need to be methodical, to work with the authorities." "I know," Olivia whispered, staring out the window. When they finally arrived at the police station, it was nearly an hour later than their scheduled appointment time. They entered the busy precinct, approaching the front desk officer. "We have an appointment with Detective Rivera," Marcus explained. "About our missing daughter, Sophia Chase." "We're a bit late, I'm afraid." The officer checked his computer, then glanced up with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, but Detective Rivera is in another meeting right now. He had to move on when you didn't arrive at the scheduled time." Marcus shot Olivia a pointed look before turning back to the officer. "How long until he's available?" "Probably a few hours," the officer replied. "You're welcome to wait, or you could come back later." Marcus thanked him and guided Olivia back outside, his frustration evident in every line of his body. "See what happens when we waste time?" he said once they were outside. "Now we have hours to kill." Olivia nodded, accepting the criticism without argument. "I'm sorry, Marcus. Truly." His expression softened slightly at her genuine remorse. "The officer mentioned there's a diner nearby. I haven't eaten since breakfast, and I'm guessing you haven't either." "You go ahead," Olivia suggested. "I think I need to walk around a bit. Clear my head. There are some interesting architectural buildings around here." Marcus hesitated, clearly torn between staying with her and giving her space. Finally, he nodded. "All right, take your phone and stay in touch. I'll text you when the detective is ready to see us." Olivia watched as Marcus walked toward the diner across the street, his shoulders slumped with the weight of their shared burden. She felt a pang of guilt for the wild goose chase she'd led him on, for the delay that had cost them their appointment, for the hope she'd raised only to have it dashed. But underneath that guilt, the suspicion still gnawed at her. She couldn't let it go. Not yet. Olivia began walking, allowing her feet to carry her without a specific destination in mind. The streets around the police station were busy with midday activity, but she barely noticed the people passing by, her thoughts consumed by the morning's events. She pulled out her phone and opened Google Maps again, returning to the street view image that had started all of this. The girl in the rose-colored hoodie and the man walking beside her. She zoomed in as much as the pixelated image would allow, studying every detail. Something about the man's posture, the way he held himself, she was sure it was Reverend Sullivan. The more she stared at the image, the more certain she became. Acting on impulse, Olivia dialed a number from her contacts, Karen, a fellow church staff member back in Pinecrest, who had worked closely with her for years. "Olivia?" Karen answered on the third ring. "Is everything okay? Did you find Sophia?" "Not yet," Olivia replied, continuing to walk as she spoke. "But I need your help. Do you remember Reverend Sullivan? He visited our church about 2 years ago, right before Sophia disappeared." "Of course I remember him. The healing service was incredible." "I need you to find everything you can about him," Olivia explained. "His background, his seminary education, anything you can dig up. Also that woman with chronic pain who was healed. What was her name? Can you find her contact information? She filled out a visitor card, and we recorded her testimony afterward." "I can look through the archives," Karen promised. "But what's this about?" "I'm not sure yet," Olivia admitted. "But I've run into the Reverend here in New York, and something doesn't feel right. Call it intuition. I'll see what I can find and call you back. Be careful, Olivia." After ending the call, Olivia continued walking, her eyes scanning her surroundings more attentively now. She passed several impressive buildings, her architectural interest momentarily overriding her troubled thoughts. At an intersection, a large building caught her eye. A sign outside identified it as a St. Agnes Children's Home with a vast green yard stretching along its side. Olivia crossed the street for a closer look, curious about the facility. Taking out her phone, she snapped a few photos of the interesting building. Perhaps she could visit the administrative office and ask about its history. It would help pass the time while waiting for Detective Rivera to become available. As she approached the entrance, a familiar car pulled into the children's home's parking lot. Olivia stopped in her tracks, her heart leaping into her throat. It was Reverend Sullivan's car, but Sullivan himself wasn't driving. Instead, it was the woman from the rental house, with the small, blonde girl visible in the passenger seat. Olivia ducked behind a large shrub, watching as the woman parked and exited the vehicle. She left the door open, standing beside the car, as though waiting for something. Minutes later, a staff member in a uniform emerged from the building, leading a small group of children. Each child carried a small suitcase, similar to the one Olivia had seen the woman loading into the car earlier. The children lined up beside the vehicle as the woman helped them load their suitcases into the trunk. Olivia counted 5 children in total, all appearing to be between 7 and 12 years old. And then, like a miracle, like an answer to 2 years of desperate prayers, Olivia saw her. Sophia, her daughter's face older than in the missing person posters, but unmistakable. Her hair was shorter now, but the eyes, the mouth, the small dimple in her cheek when she smiled. Olivia would recognize them anywhere. For a moment, Olivia couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. Time seemed to stand still as she stared at her daughter, alive and only yards away after 2 endless years of searching. With trembling hands, Olivia reached for her phone and called Marcus. "Olivia," he answered immediately. "Marcus," she managed to say, her voice shaking. "I found her. I found Sophia. Get the car and come to me now. I'm sharing my location." "What? Where are you?" "It's her, Marcus. I'm sure of it. She's getting into a car with that woman from the Reverend's house." "Please hurry and call the police." She ended the call and quickly shared her location with Marcus, then turned her attention back to the scene unfolding in the parking lot. The woman was ushering the children into the car, preparing to leave. Olivia couldn't wait for Marcus or the police. If that car drove away with Sophia inside, she might lose her daughter all over again. Taking a deep breath, Olivia stepped out from her hiding place and ran toward the group, calling out as she approached, "Sophia! Sophia!" The woman at the car saw her coming and reacted with alarm, quickly telling the children to get inside and closing the doors. She rushed to the driver's seat, thanking the staff member who stood by, looking confused by the sudden commotion. Before the woman could start the engine, Olivia reached the car and pounded on the window, her eyes locked on her daughter in the back seat. Sophia's expression transformed from confusion to shock. She rolled down the window, her eyes wide. "Mom, is that you?" Then turning to the woman in the driver's seat, Sophia asked in a bewildered voice, "Did God bring my mom back from heaven?" The woman started to say something, but Olivia was already opening the back door, gathering Sophia into her arms. The feeling, so familiar yet so desperately missed, brought tears streaming down her face. "It's really me, sweetheart," Olivia whispered into her daughter's hair. "I'm alive and I've been looking for you every day since you disappeared." The staff member approached, clearly confused by the scene. "What's going on here?" Olivia looked up, her arms still wrapped tightly around Sophia, as though she might vanish again if she let go. "This is my daughter. She was kidnapped from our hometown in Montana 2 years ago. We've been searching for her ever since." The staff member's face paled at Olivia's words, her eyes darting between Olivia, Sophia, and the woman in the driver's seat. "I don't understand. These children are under the care of Reverend Sullivan's ministry. They're orphans he's taken in." Before Olivia could respond, a car screeched to a halt at the entrance of the parking lot. Marcus leapt out, his eyes frantically scanning the area until they landed on Olivia and the girl in her arms. "Sophia!" he called out, his voice cracking with emotion. Sophia turned at the sound, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Dad! You're alive too!" Marcus ran to them, enveloping both Olivia and Sophia in a tight embrace, his body shaking with silent sobs. "You found her," he whispered to Olivia. "You actually found her." Meanwhile, the woman in the driver's seat closed her door and appeared to be making a phone call, probably to the Reverend. Her movements were hurried and nervous. She started the engine, clearly intending to leave with the other children still in the car. Marcus broke away from the embrace and strode to the front of the vehicle, slamming his fist on the hood. "Don't you dare move this car!" he shouted, his face flushed with anger. The wail of police sirens filled the air as multiple patrol cars converged on the scene, responding to Marcus's emergency call. Officers emerged, weapons drawn, quickly assessing the volatile situation. "Police, everyone stay where you are," one officer commanded, approaching cautiously. Marcus raised his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "My name is Marcus Chase. That's my wife, Olivia, and we've just found our daughter, Sophia, who was kidnapped 2 years ago. This woman," he pointed to the driver, "is involved in her abduction." Police secured the scene quickly, helping the other frightened children out of the car. The staff member attempted to calm them, clearly as shocked by the unfolding events as the children themselves. "She says she's the Reverend's assistant," an officer informed Olivia and Marcus as they stood protectively near Sophia. "Says these children are part of his ministry and discipleship program, but not his biological children. They're kept here at the children's home during his travels." Olivia held Sophia close. "This is my missing daughter and these other children. They're likely taken from their families too." The officer nodded grimly. "We'll need to confirm that at the station." Officers checked each child, ensuring none were physically harmed before arranging for transport to the police station. The staff member agreed to accompany them, informing her colleagues of her absence. "Where is the Reverend now?" an officer asked the assistant. "He's resting at the rental house," she replied, looking panicked. "He told me to take Mila and the other children with his luggage somewhere near the airport. He said he'd join us after the evening service." Olivia quickly described her earlier interaction with the Reverend at the church, including her suspicions that had led her here. The police coordinated with a backup team to go to the Reverend's rental property for his arrest. "We're coming with you," Marcus insisted, his arm protectively around Sophia. The officers agreed, though they made it clear the family would need to remain in the police vehicle. Sophia refused to leave Olivia's side, clinging to her mother as if afraid she might disappear again. The other children and the staff member were placed in different cars, all bound for the police station. As they drove away, Olivia held her daughter close, hardly daring to believe that their nightmare was finally ending. When they arrived at the Reverend's rental house, multiple police cars already surrounded the property. Through the window of their police vehicle, Olivia watched as officers escorted the handcuffed Reverend from the house toward a waiting patrol car. Their eyes met briefly as he was led past, and Olivia felt a chill run through her. The photograph she had glimpsed earlier slipped from his pocket onto the ground. An officer retrieved it, bringing it to show Olivia and Marcus. It was indeed a portrait of Sophia. There were also pictures of other children. At the police station, Olivia checked her phone while Sophia was being gently interviewed by a female officer in a special room designed for child witnesses. She had a missed call from Karen, her fellow church staff member, in Pinecrest. She excused herself to return the call, stepping just outside the room where she could still see Sophia through the glass panel in the door. "Karen, it's Olivia." "Olivia, I've been trying to reach you. I found some troubling information about Reverend Sullivan. It seems he never completed seminary school like he claimed. We didn't catch that when we vetted him before his visit because we relied on the credentials he emailed us, which must have been forged. And that woman, the first-time visitor with chronic pain, I'd question the authenticity of her healing. She never returned to our church after Reverend Sullivan left." Olivia wasn't surprised. She had expected as much. "We found Sophia, Karen. She's safe with us now." A gasp came from the other end of the line. "Oh, thank God, but what does this have to do with the Reverend?" "He's the one who took her," Olivia explained, her voice low. "There are other children too. Police are still investigating the case." That's monstrous," Karen whispered. "I did some more digging, and I found that his real name is Gregory Palmer. When I searched that name, I found an entirely different history than what he presented to us." "Gregory Palmer," Olivia repeated the name, feeling venomous on her tongue. "He used the credibility of the church to gain access to vulnerable children, and we invited him in." "You couldn't have known, Olivia. None of us could." After ending the call, Olivia ran a quick internet search for the name Gregory Palmer. The results confirmed what Karen had said. The man they knew as Reverend Sullivan shared the same face as Gregory Palmer, a man with a history of fraud charges in other states. Olivia returned to the family room, sharing what she'd learned with Marcus. "I feel responsible," she admitted. "I was the one who checked his credentials before we invited him to speak at our church. I should have been more thorough." Marcus shook his head. "This isn't on you, Olivia. Con artists like him are experts at manipulation. You had no reason to suspect he was anything other than what he claimed to be." "You were right to trust your intuition," Marcus continued, taking her hand. "God led us here. What was meant for harm has been turned to good." Before they could discuss it further, Detective Rivera entered the room. He was a serious-looking man in his 50s, with kind eyes that belied his stern expression. Sophia stood next to him, looking nervous but relieved to see her parents. The family was escorted to a private room where Detective Rivera joined them. "Mr. and Mrs. Chase," he began, taking a seat across from them. "First, let me say how glad I am that you found your daughter. Cases like these don't often have such happy endings." Sophia had agreed to share all the details with her parents present, though she had already told the officers everything about what had happened since her disappearance. "After youth group, I was walking with my friends, but we split up at the corner," she explained, her voice small but steady. "Reverend Sullivan appeared in his car and told me Mom and Dad had been in a terrible accident." Olivia's heart clenched as Sophia continued. "I believed him because we're a religious family, and I thought ministers always told the truth. He took me to a funeral, where I saw photos of Mom and Dad, and the coffins too." "A fake funeral," Olivia whispered, horrified by the elaborate deception. Sophia nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I couldn't believe it when I saw you today. I've prayed every day for you to return, even though Reverend Sullivan said I'd only see you again in heaven." When asked about how the Reverend had treated her, Sophia explained he would take the children to church events, introducing them as part of his youth ministry program. They were told to call him Father Sullivan and to tell anyone who asked that they were orphans being given a second chance. "He was nice most of the time," Sophia said, her brow furrowed. "But he got really angry if we asked about going home or contacting anyone outside the ministry. He said the outside world was full of sin and that he was protecting us." The rest of the interview focused on the practical aspects of the case. Detective Rivera explained that they had determined Sullivan, or rather Gregory Palmer, was a charismatic but manipulative predator who had preyed on the trust people placed in religious figures. "He appears to have taken children while traveling between churches," the detective explained. "He used his position as a guest minister to identify vulnerable targets, then crafted elaborate stories to convince the children their parents were gone." "What happens now?" Marcus asked, his arm protectively around Sophia. "We've arrested both the man known as Reverend Sullivan, Gregory Palmer is his real name, and his assistant, Janet Benson. They're facing multiple charges including kidnapping, fraud, identity theft, and child endangerment." "What about the other children?" Olivia asked, thinking of the frightened faces she'd seen at the children's home. "We're searching databases and contacting their families," Rivera assured them. "They come from various states across the country, so reunification will take some time. But Sophia here is very fortunate. Her family found her." After the interviews concluded, they stayed in the family room, processing the events of the day. Sophia sat between her parents, holding both their hands, as if afraid they might disappear if she let go. "I don't understand," she said after a long silence. "If you weren't dead, why didn't you find me sooner?" The question pierced Olivia's heart. "Oh, sweetheart, we never stopped looking. Not for a single day. We've traveled all over the country following every lead. We put up posters, hired private investigators, talked to the police in dozens of cities. But he showed me the funeral, Sophia insisted, confusion evident in her face. I saw you in the coffins. It wasn't real, Marcus explained gently. He probably used fake photos, actors, maybe even empty coffins. It was all a lie to make you believe we were gone so you wouldn't try to escape or contact us. Sophia nodded slowly, trying to absorb this information. Some of the other kids said their parents were dead too. Do you think they're actually alive like you? Olivia and Marcus exchanged a glance. It's very possible, Olivia said. The detective said they're looking for everyone's families right now. A knock at the door interrupted them. Pastor Jennings stood in the doorway, his face lined with distress. I hope I'm not intruding, he said hesitantly. Detective Rivera invited him in, and the pastor approached the family, his hands clasped before him. I wanted to come personally to express how deeply sorry I am for what happened, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We had no idea that we were harboring such evil in our midst. We've cancelled tonight's service, of course. This wasn't your fault either, Pastor, Olivia said, surprising herself with her forgiveness. He deceived everyone. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the glass wall of the family room, they could see the police leading Sullivan Palmer across the station in handcuffs. Their eyes met briefly, and Olivia felt a chill run down her spine at the emptiness she saw there. Pastor Jennings stepped forward again. If you're staying in the area for a while, I'd like to invite you to our prayer service next Sunday. Our congregation would be honored to celebrate Sophia's return with you. And perhaps your testimony might bring hope to others who are still searching for their loved ones. Olivia looked to Marcus, who nodded. We'd be honored, she said. After all, it was faith that led us to finding our daughter again. Later that evening, they returned to their Airbnb, all three of them unwilling to be separated even for a moment. Sophia explored the small apartment with curiosity, touching everything as if to assure herself it was real. Can we call Grandma and Grandpa? She asked suddenly. And Uncle Jack? And Lucy from church? Do they all know I wasn't really dead? Olivia smiled through her tears. Yes to everything. Everyone has been praying for your return. We'll call them all tomorrow when it's not so late in Montana. Tonight is just for us. As Sophia showered, her first shower in private in years, she explained, Olivia and Marcus held each other in the living room, finally allowing themselves to feel the full impact of the day's events. I still can't believe we found her, Marcus whispered, his voice raw with emotion. If you hadn't followed your intuition, if you hadn't supported me even when you thought I was wrong, Olivia countered. I'm sorry I doubted you, Marcus said, pulling back to look into her eyes. When you saw her on Google Maps, when you insisted on following Sullivan's car, you were right all along. Olivia smiled, touching his face gently. Faith takes many forms. Sometimes it's about believing in what you can't see, and sometimes it's about trusting what you know in your heart to be true, even when others doubt. Marcus reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. Our faith was tested in ways I never imagined possible. I nearly lost mine entirely. But not completely, Olivia noted. You were still beside me, still searching, still hoping. Because of you, Marcus admitted. Your strength carried us both. That night, after Sophia had fallen asleep between them on their bed, neither parent willing to let her sleep alone her first night back, Olivia lay awake, watching the gentle rise and fall of her daughter's chest, listening to her soft breathing. The journey wasn't over. There would be therapy sessions, police statements, perhaps even court appearances. Sophia would need time to adjust to normal life again to understand that she hadn't been orphaned, that she hadn't been saved by a benevolent minister, but kidnapped by a predator. But tonight, in this moment, Olivia allowed herself to simply be grateful. Her family was whole again. The empty space at their table would be filled, the silence in their home replaced by Sophia's laughter. The unanswered questions that had haunted their days and nights had finally found resolution. As she drifted towards sleep, Olivia's mind returned to the Bible verse she'd read each day during Sophia's absence. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For 2 years she had asked, and sought, and knocked. And finally, against all odds, her prayers had been answered, not through miracle or divine intervention, but through a mother's unwavering love and determination. Through the sacred instinct that bound her to her child across time and distance, allowing her to recognize a glimpse of rose-colored fabric, a whiff of vanilla perfume, a silhouette in a photograph. In the end, faith hadn't been about waiting for God to act, but about finding the courage to act herself, to follow her heart, even when reason suggested otherwise, to trust her instincts, even when doubted by those she loved most. And in that realization, Olivia found a deeper kind of peace than she'd known before, a peace born not of perfect certainty, but of the knowledge that love, in its most primal and determined form, could overcome even the darkest of circumstances. Beside her, Sophia stirred slightly in her sleep, reaching out unconsciously to touch her mother's arm, as if, even in slumber, she needed the reassurance of her presence. Olivia placed her hand gently over her daughter's, a silent promise. I'm here. I'll always be here. And I will always find you. Thank you for watching. If you like this story, leave a comment. It really helps me grow the channel so I can tell more stories like this one.